Right, so today's topic is about embedded finance. Is it a good to have or a got to have? So I thought that, before we start the session, we maybe conduct a quick poll to see what do you guys think. All right, I think most of you have voted. So let's end the poll and show the results. So 56% thinks it's got to have and 44% good to have. So seems like there's a pretty even split, or more or less even split, but I guess we're more swayed towards the got to have. So in the next couple of slides, I'm just going to share with you some of the trends about embedded finance and what are some of the things to think about. So firstly, what's embedded finance? Well, embedded finance is simply the seamless integration of financial services into traditionally non-financial businesses or platforms. And it's a means to an end. So embedded finance enables customers to attain their needs and wants. And if it's properly embedded, finance actually becomes invisible, right? You don't even notice it. It just becomes one of those intermediate processes that happens in the background, that will bring us to our final destination. Now, Andreessen Horowitz says that every company will become a financial services company. And another commentator thinks that this embedded finance will be a $7.2 trillion opportunity, which will essentially double the value created by traditional finance today. And in the recent survey by Accenture, non-financial companies are also taking note and they are taking action. 84% of these companies think that financial services are critical to their future success. And about half of them plan to invest or launch embedded finance offerings in the near future. And of those companies who have already embarked on the embedded finance journey, a vast majority reports that they have been successful or very successful in acquiring new customers and increasing engagement levels. So how does embedded finance actually look like? So guess what? Before this term embedded finance became fashionable, seems like M-DAQ has already been doing it. And in the next couple of minutes, Jason, our subject matter expert, shall showcase to you how we are actually embedding FX to help the world shop in their local currencies.
Thank you.
So over to you, Jason. Well, thanks, Jason. Thank you for showing us the magic. Now, so
this magic is real, by the way.
Yeah, it is real
magic.
Yeah. So embedded FX is just one example of embedded finance. Right? Finance can be embedded in many other areas as well to accelerate the velocity of liquidity to improve life situation. So an example of embedded payment would be a company called FOMOPay. Right? So they provide integrated payment solution that embeds itself in merchants and POS so that consumers can easily check out using the SGQR, and it also reduces friction, right, for them to complete their purchase, and therefore this enables sales for the merchants. And in embedded FX, well, Jason has already walked you through and shared with you how we are actually enabling the world to shop in local currencies. I would just like to add that we are also enabling wallets and payment processors, as well as stock exchanges in other use cases. In embedded credit, Atomi with its BNPL solution for merchants enables customers to pay for purchase over time, and therefore providing this credit that will help to remove buying inertia and also helping the merchants to accelerate sales. In financial wellness or embedded wellness, there's a startup called Wagely. They provide financial wellness through earned wage access so that workers can get access to their wages early and helping them to avoid costly overdrafts and getting into debt traps. So from atoms to bits, there is no turning back on this digital revolution. In fact, our circumstances in the past 2 years have only accelerated the adoption of what is termed as the sixth wave of technological innovation, where our everyday lives have essentially been digitalized and automated. So this is actually great news for non-financial companies who are intending to offer financial services. Because whereas in the past, before you can even start thinking about offering financial services, you'll have to develop the entire stack of capabilities from DevSecOps, core systems, payments, data, getting the necessary regulatory licenses, and thinking about how to manage your risk. And that usually means spending millions of dollars and probably putting in 2 years of heavy lifting effort to create this box before you can start to deliver true value to the customers. So now with a myriad of fintechs, many of these services can be offered as a service. And with the greater flexibility and agility, companies can now go back to their main business, to their core competencies of developing the delightful apps that wow the customers. So does that mean that non-financial companies can now easily transform to become financial services with the flick of a switch? Not quite, actually, because business transformation is still complex. While technologies can alleviate the how, transformation is about discerning the why. And many times when we start start this process of discovering our why, we'll encounter multiple factors that make this whole discovery super complex. For instance, developing a strong customer value proposition will likely lead you to better differentiation, but this could also mean that you may encounter capability gaps in terms of your existing competencies as well as those that you need to develop. And what this means that it could increase the risk of execution, and a failure of that execution could give rise to higher cost of transformation. And conversely, if there is not much differentiation, and it means that you don't have a very strong customer value proposition, and with that, it could also lead you to a case where that you'll not be able to scale. And if you don't scale, then it could affect your revenue and profitability potential. So actually, a systems approach is required, right, to deliberate between all these factors of customer, capability, people, and business. Right. So it's necessary that we also not only start off with the right strategy, but we also need to have the right execution. And all this boils down to winning the right game, because winning the wrong game means losing. Right? And what this means is we also need to be clear about deciding where to play, what to play, and who to play with. Because in today's context, disruption is no longer just industry disruption, but ecosystem disruption. And in ecosystem disruption, a competition is no longer confined to within an industry. Because the introduction of new value propositions redefines competition across industries, and that erases boundaries and overturns structure. And in an ecosystem game, the players who play the roles in an ecosystem are that of an orchestrator, a realizer, and an enabler. An orchestrator is someone who has direct access to the end customer. A realizer is one who provides the product and services to the end user. And an enabler supports both the realizer and the orchestrator, forming the foundational support or the foundational backbone of an ecosystem. And in an ecosystem, a leader is someone who aligns everyone around the value architecture in order to deliver the value proposition. So it is a role more than an outcome. So in general, when all these ecosystem foundations are established, the platforms are then being designed and built, and then the focus of the platforms would be to acquire affiliates or work with affiliates to expand and drive network effects. And so this brings us back to our opening question of embedded finance. Is it a good to have or a got to have? So going back to first principles, finance is a means to an end, right? Well, end users rarely want to buy it for its own sake, right? Now, when businesses and platforms successfully embed finance, they delight in their customer journey, and which will translate to higher user acquisition and higher engagement levels, which in turn then translates to multifold increase in revenue. And in our ecosystem, in our age of ecosystem disruption, many can play this game, but it is still necessary to pick the right strategy with the right execution so that we can win the right game. So M-DAQ has been one of the pioneers in embedded FX, and we are now investigating into other areas of embedded finance. And so we're seeking out like-minded partners to do it together. So embedded finance, a good to have or a got to have? Well, most certainly, to us, it's a got to have.
It's great. Sounds like our ART test. Yeah, it's good to have, and you got to have, you know. So thanks, Lawrence, for that amazing sharing. I wanted to also kind of take the chance to say a little bit about Lawrence, because I kind of realized I missed out something about my good man right here. Lawrence, apart from his experience being in the fintech space, a founder, a banker in the capital markets business, he's joining also M-DAQ about a month plus ago, and he is the lead and the general manager for a very secret project known as Project Sunray, that you can see in the initial EDM which we created for this purpose. So what is Sunray all about, right? I don't think we will be going too much into detail about that, but a little hint is it's definitely something to do with embedded finance. That's as open as you get. Some of you obviously got it. Some of you maybe need a little bit of time, but we're getting there. And so now we're going to break it out into a bit of Q&A. I'm going to ask Lawrence some questions that are on my mind, but I also like to invite the audience. If you have any questions, please do feel free to post it on the Q&A segment. And after we have this chance of a dialogue between myself and Lawrence, we will pivot back into the audience to answer any queries that you might have. All right. So now to one-to-one time with Lawrence. I wanted to just ask Lawrence because, you know, he was from the banks before. I was a banker before joining M-DAQ, and we have a bit of experience, right? And I would say that one of the things that I felt was very clear is the fact that banks are the OG, you know, in this space, original gangster, that's what we call it. They're the original, folks that kind of promoted the idea of embedded finance. Think about most large international banks, right? You know, like Citi, that have a end-to-end structure from consumer to corporate banking, and then they have financing, there's foreign exchange, there's cash management, there's wealth management, basically to encompass whatever a consumer would arguably need. But at the same time, the banks which have been driving this embedded finance notion for many, many years, with today's rise of fintechs in the world of the finance industry, very clearly, we do see a surge in terms of the uptake and also the adoption of embedded finance solutions, with the examples he showed earlier with Flomo Pay, with ourselves in this scene, with Atome, and very clearly the advent of how this is going to change the landscape. So maybe I'd like to ask Lawrence, from his experience, both in the banking side and also as a CEO previously in his own startup, what are some of those learning points that the banks have done, right, that we could maybe leverage on in the world of embedded finance? And those are some of the pitfalls that they couldn't overcome, that we could use to our advantage, whoever it is in this embedded finance space going forward. What do you think, Lawrence?
Yeah, well, thanks, Jason. So first of all, I'd just like to say that this is not a zero-sum game, right? No, there was a slide that says that it's going to be a $7.2 trillion opportunity. And that shows that it's an expansion, right, of the value creation from the financial services sector by enrolling players who are not traditionally offering those services, who are not traditional in the space of providing financial services, right? And I think, this whole digital revolution, the sixth wave of technology innovation has really taken hold. I think in the past couple of years, banks have also been investing to upgrade their stack. It used to be a case where banks have had a lot of legacy systems, and then the challenge to open up those legacy systems to connect to the outside world is, I guess, it will still remain a challenge, right, for some banks. But some of the bigger banks have been investing in this space, and therefore availing APIs for other companies to connect into. Okay, right. So that's one, technological challenge. But more than that, it's also about the business strategy and the business requirements, right? Which goes back to the point about deliberating on the interactions between the customer capabilities, the people and the business, because it depends on what is the customer value proposition. It may or may not require you to rent a license from a bank, right? For instance, in our case with AliExpress, we're providing the embedded FX service, but that doesn't require a bank license. It doesn't even require a payment license. So it all depends on what is the customer value proposition that you want to address or put forth together with your partners.
Thanks, Lawrence. That's very insightful, knowing from your experience. So we always talk about learning from the best so that we can hopefully make more progress. That's a good rhyme. Anyway, so I think that was something that I want to take as a segue into my second question, which is one of the things that I noticed you mentioned just now about the embedded finance spectrum is that there was this part whereby you have to move fast, right? At the same time, also trying to make sure that you have the right pillars to support the whole spectrum of embedded finance. Just like the banks have done so with their various departments and business units, I would think that the embedded finance kind of runway is also going to be a mix of both either building your own technology stack, like you mentioned, or partnering with the right partners who have that subject matter expertise in that field. And judging between the two, how would you weigh acquiring versus building? What are the key things to look out for, the pros and cons of saying, I'm going to acquire this business, I'm going to build it in-house, right? And the timeline that we need to kind of decide between the two, because if it's a speed to market situation, maybe there's no time to build it. Maybe it's more time to kind of say, I'm just going to acquire somebody, right? Like what we saw with Visa and Master in the space, and also with some of the other players in the BNPL kind of sector. What are your views, Lawrence?
Yeah, well, so my thoughts on this is that, firstly, we recognize that we're in this age of ecosystem disruption, right? Now, in an ecosystem disruption, I shared that there are a number of players who interact in this ecosystem. So I guess it first boils down to what is the role that this company is trying to do in an ecosystem. Is it an orchestrator, or is it a realizer, or is it an enabler, right? And sometimes a company may have ambitions to do a couple of roles, right, in this ecosystem. But it is quite rare that a company can do all the roles and all at once. So therefore, ecosystem game is a collaborative team sport. It requires the ecosystem leader to align all the players who are playing in this ecosystem, and it could be a combination of partnerships or acquisition, because it depends on what is the desire of the ecosystem leader. If it wants to build up certain capabilities, or it wants to build up certain, be able to be in a position to offer certain products and services to address the needs and wants in the ecosystem, then an M&A might be the faster route instead of building it from scratch. So yeah, so I would say, in a roundabout way, again, it all depends on the strategy, and then we have to have a very deliberate consideration about the execution approach and picking the right game to play.
Okay. Sounds very strategic by mentioning what you just said. Yeah, so I think that is always that hard balance you have to find, right? Because there is a cost element, right? You do have a unlimited war chest. We also want to be fairly flexible to speed, so that we can get to where we want to fast enough.
Yeah. So on the matter of speed, I mean, there are certain instances where speed, where it's maybe perhaps better to be later rather than to be the first.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because if we recognize that we have to do things with a number of people in this ecosystem game, then this game is subject to, I think, two main risks, right? One is the co-innovation risk, and the other one is an adoption chain risk. So what's a co-innovation risk? So let's say we have designed a customer value proposition together with partners. So it also premises on not just our own execution, our own ability to execute, but it also premises on the partner's ability to deliver that innovation at the same pace and at the right time. So therefore, if we map out this whole probability, it is we have to take into account the likelihood of every party in the ecosystem to be able to produce the goods in time. Now, the other part about adoption chain risk is that in a nutshell, it just means it is as good as the weakest link. If in the entire ecosystem chain, if there is one party that is not adopting or does not have enough incentives or net surplus to participate in this whole ecosystem, then it could impact the adoption, right, of the whatever innovation or value proposition that you're trying to introduce for your customers. Yeah.
Okay, that's a very good point. I think it's not really easy to kind of put a right or wrong answer. It's more of a case where, depending on your trajectory of the technology, you may have to choose one over the other, and it comes with our pros and cons. So very clear. I also want to kind of give a bit of a disclaimer, because even though I'm from M-DAQ, what our dear friend here is working on, Project Sunray, is such a secretive project, CIA classified, FBI, and all that stuff. So I don't know 100% what this man is doing right here, apart from the fact that he's smart. So I think our hands are pretty safe. So without going too much into detail on this very secretive project, I wanted to maybe ask Lawrence, also a way for me to find out more. If you look for partners to come into this play with us, this journey of embedded finance on Project Sunray, maybe what are the three things you will look out for in a partner that you think it's a must-have, not a good to have, it's a must-have, right? And so that in case our viewers who are out there who are thinking very earnestly to join this amazing ship, right? How would they kind of feel that I have those attributes, right? What are the three kind of top things that you want to see?
Yeah. So, well, thanks for that. So I think first principle, and I think the most important principle, is that in a partnership, we're looking about win-win partnership, and which means that everybody who is participating in whatever collaboration that we're getting into we'll have something to take away, right? We'll have something to take away from the table. So that's the starting principle. So as I shared earlier, there are a couple of roles in the ecosystem, be it an orchestrator, a realizer, or an enabler. I think for us, we're certainly most likely to start off in the enabling role, and we are looking to partner with orchestrators and realizers, which means people who have direct contact with end users, where we can co-create and co-develop customer value propositions, and for certain instances, we can be a realizer, we can partner with realizers, right, who have a compelling solution or a compelling service to offer to customers, and we can enrich it or seamlessly integrate it, right, with our enabling function. Yeah.
You mentioned 3.
Yeah.
Okay. I hope you guys got the hint, because it was quite cryptic, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So I felt that was a very good segue into our next segment, which is on the audience Q&A. But before we go into that, I wanted to also kind of give my huge thanks to Lawrence for sharing this. And let's just kind of click this button. All right, good job, guys. Good job. I know those of you are clapping at home very hard. Thanks for joining that. My mom always told me that if no one's clapping for you, clap for yourself. So good job, Lawrence. We're going to open up the floor to the audience members' questions, and I do see quite a number of questions coming up hot and fast on the Q&A segment. So I'm just going to pick 1 or 2 to maybe ask Lawrence, if I may. So one of the questions that was posed was, "Hi, thanks for the great session." Thank you so much. It is a great session, I agree. How is embedded finance more inclusive than open finance, right? And can you elaborate on the differences, gap between these two terms? This was one of the questions posed, which I thought was quite good, because open finance, the world of open API, and how, like you said, banks are opening up their vaults of API to provide a white label service to some of the users. That's something that's happening right now. How does that term, in many ways, seem different compared to what embedded finance is all about? Lawrence.
Yeah. So my view on this is that I think embedded finance is more of a business proposition or a business outcome. Open finance perhaps refers to the state of the technology, that it's an API is available for you to connect two systems. So embedded finance, as I shared in the deck, is really thinking about customer insights, customer architecture, customer value proposition, and as a result, how can you insert a financial service in order to bring the customer to their final destination, to their final outcome. So I would think they're both relevant. They're both necessary. And embedded finance is a take about the business objectives marrying the technological capabilities.
Okay. So I hope that answers your question, anonymous attendee who asked this question. We have also another anonymous attendee, a lot of anonymous people, who asked the question about, how does M-DAQ compete against other large B2B embedded finance players? What is our value proposition? Would you be able to kind of share a bit more without going too much beyond my pay grade answers?
Well, I think for starters, I think there's no one player who will win it all, right? I think one of the points that I tried to cover earlier is that when we are modifying our our value architecture, right, to participate in this age of ecosystem disruption, it's not about doing it all by yourself, and it's not about doing everything all at once, right? So everybody will have their relative strengths, and I think for M-DAQ's perspective, I think our core strength lies in embedded FX, right? Because as I shared before, the embedded finance term became fashionable, we have already been doing that without actually coining it. And we have had lots of customer experience or history, right, in dealing in this space, and therefore I think that will be a strong anchor for us to flywheel, right, to other areas of embedded finance.
Thanks, Lawrence. I have another question from Pawan. Good job, Pawan. This question is, wow, this is a long question. What is the role of technology in M-DAQ success as a fintech? What are your views regarding collaboration with technology providers for fueling growth in M-DAQ? Well, I think this is a question that kind of ties in with some of the points we raised earlier, where we spoke about how do we look at partnerships or building the stack in-house. So I think Pawan is probably kind of like trying to get more information from you, right? So good one, Pawan. Right. So what do you think? What do you think, Lawrence? What can you share? What kind of bins can you spill?
Well, I think we're open. We're open for business. Yeah, we're open to collaborate with partners, either to on the front of acquiring businesses or acquiring capabilities. Yeah, because our desire is to actually build an ecosystem where we can embed these innovations, right, to satisfy our customers, to help to fulfill customer jobs. And so our starting point is, of course, embedded FX, but we're also looking at other areas of embedded payments, embedded wellness, embedded credit. Yeah, and in the ecosystem construct, we don't envisage that we're going to do everything all by ourselves, and it's not. It's probably not sensible that we try to build everything ourselves as well. So also, I would say we are very open to collaborate with partners who are aligned and like-minded to collectively deliver customer value propositions.
Okay, so that's a very long way of saying yes. Yes, Pawan, we are open for business and happy to partner. So please do hit us at the emails that we shared earlier. We showed that at the end of the session so that you can reach out to myself or Lawrence to work on potential partnerships with some of the technology that you might have in play. So I don't know, maybe. I wanted to also say that thank you for the questions that are coming hot and fast on the Q&A. The next person who has posted something is Caroline Huang. Caroline, who is a very well-established treasury expert, from Chevron in the old days, and of course now, coming into the fintech scene, being a very good adopter of technology and also education. So Caroline, big shout out to you. Also want to take this chance to shout out to the two anonymous attendees who asked questions and Pawan. So all four of you deserve air horn. So that's for you right there, and you deserve it, right? So Caroline asked a question, which is, hello, Jason and Lawrence with bracket. Thank you for sharing your time. Thank you for sharing your time with us too. Besides FX conversion capability, bracket embedded finance, example in AliExpress website or other companies, close bracket, what other software as a solution does M-DAQ offer? So maybe I'll just take this question, a quick one. So Caroline, I think one of the key things that we wanted to talk about maybe in this scene is that fundamentally M-DAQ is a foreign exchange specialist. I think we have said it many, many times, and something that's core to our DNA, right? So one of the things that we work in and we are working on is providing a treasury as a service solution to our customers, where many companies, maybe not the big ones, where have a huge regional treasury hub of thousands of people, companies that are in the SME space or even up and coming fintech companies that are trying to come into the space but don't have the expertise in the treasury business. We come in and share our expertise to provide treasury-related solutions, be it management of banking lines, of liquidity providers, providing the best ways to hedge exposures from a company perspective. That's what we do. Increasingly, it's a model that we see that companies that want to focus on what they do best, be it in the manufacturing or in the e-commerce or in the tech space, they may want to say, hey, treasury is important, but I don't have the expertise. So can I outsource that? Can we have someone who is a best in class come into the play to help provide that solution? So that's one of the examples that we have on the treasury as a service model. We are also building a solution in the hedging business, in the hedging as a service. We call it HAAS, HAAS. The idea is to provide a multifaceted hedging solution to companies which are looking to hedge their exposures, especially in the export and import business, where you could be selling something overseas and then acquiring your cash flows a bit later. So there's a mismatch whereby there's a foreign exchange element where you could be receiving in a currency that's different from your currency of operations. So how do you manage the exposure? How do you manage the working capital cycle where you potentially have a foreign exchange impact that could really kind of eat into your margins of business, right? So companies today, as you know, if you are a large MNC, we saw it in movies like The Big Short, right? Wolf of Wall Street, where if you're a company that cannot sign an ISDA with a bank, you probably can't get access to tools like forwards, options, swaps, and that leaves you out in the open when you come to problems where you're trying to solve a simple business solution where your payment terms and your receipt of currencies could really kind of eat into your margins. And if you are in that single-digit margin business, FX volatility could really play a very big hit on your end-to-end kind of numbers. So excuse me there. So I would say that hedging as a service is something that we are working very closely with the regulators and also our partners. And we hope to be able to bring that to help the SMEs and also the fintech players in today's market, so that today they can focus on what they do best and have people like M-DAQ come into play to help to solve some of these important issues that they face. So that's my kind of answer to your question, Caroline. And thank you for asking the question. I love to hear from you because you are one of the best in the field, and definitely kudos to you for leading Chevron in the golden days. Thank you for those memories. Thanks, Caroline. So maybe I'll just want to move on to another question, and wait some more. Caroline kind of asked the question again, part 2, another air horn for you, Caroline. Good job. Question is, guessing Project Sunray sustainability related? Question mark. So I'm gonna pose that to my man Lawrence. What do you think? What's your answer today? I don't know anything. So what do you think? Is there a sustainability element tied to it?
Well, I think there is certainly an ESG sort of theme towards Sunray. I think for every business, the core of every business is the objective of every business is to try to make lives better, right, for your customers, right? And that's if we're able to successfully answer those customer value proposition, then there is an ESG element in it, and more so in Project Sunray, because I really give you a hint that we're trying to develop an ecosystem, and beyond the social impacts, the environment as well. I mean, it is to take stock of all the interests of the partners, of the stakeholders who are interacting in the ecosystem, and then of course providing a governance layer where we can establish and sustain that equilibrium. So especially for ecosystem related business, it's super important to have that governance layer in place, because if there's instability in the structure, then the business will then encounter volatility, right? Yeah. So yeah, I guess it does include ESG elements in our business construct.
Thanks, Lawrence. I think one of the things to add on Lawrence's point is, it's one thing to be a Singaporean fintech. It's another thing to be able to be in a position where you could do something for the good of the people. Right? I know a little bit about Sunray, and I think that essentially the idea is to bring power to the hands of the people that need it, and to empower lives and to make people's lives a lot easier to live by. And it's very exciting because there is a social good to that, right? Whereby COVID today has ravaged the lives of many, livelihoods of many. And can we bring some of that technology to help alleviate those lives? We'll see, right? We're kind of running short on time here, but I'm going to take this chance to talk about two questions that sound like the same question. Adrian and also anonymous attendee number 3 kind of posed a question as in, should banks basically be worried with the rise of embedded finance? And also, would embedded finance provide a tough challenge to traditional banking? So maybe that question, Lawrence, you came from the bank, right? I came from the bank. Of course, I think the answer is definitely yes, but how so, right? How should the banks think about, countering this? Or is there a need to counter? Is there a need to partner? Is there a need to say it's an ecosystem rather than saying that it's your pie versus my pie? Is it a case whereby we can enlarge the pie together? What do you think?
Yeah, I believe it's the latter, right? And of course, it also depends on the how some banks are thinking about it. I think in business there is always two sides of a coin. It's either an opportunity or it's a threat, and a lot of it depends on what is your action or what's your decision, right? Of the changes that come before us, right? In this context. So how could it be a threat? Well, this is an ecosystem disruption, right? So, companies that are not traditionally in the financial services space could then now enter financial services with the help of fintechs, right? Or with the help of even other banks, right? So if a bank is not paying attention to that, it could have its lunch taken away. But on the other hand, a bank can also play in this game because they already have invested heavily, right, in setting up the whole financial stack, and the whole capabilities is already existing. So if they can make the modifications to their architecture to enable people to connect to them, and I guess also from their business standpoint, be desirous of sharing some of these capabilities, they could then attract customers or ecosystems that are otherwise not within their reach. So I would say that it can, it all depends on the attitudes of the bank. But by and large, I also believe that this is an expansion of financial services. It's not a zero-sum game. So banks, fintechs, non-financial companies, consumers, they can all benefit from the advent of financial technologies.
Thank you so much for that, Lawrence. Very clear insights on the path ahead. And ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you for your time. We have kind of come to the end of today's Lab Crawl series with the Singapore FinTech Festival and M-DAQ at the center stage of this amazing event. I wanted to take this time to thank Lawrence and all of you online, the 3 anonymous question bearers, and also Caroline, Pawan. Thank you for posing questions. I wish we had more time to spend with you on this topic. And the world ahead looks to be extremely uplifting. I think there's a lot of positive momentum coming to this space very shortly. So do watch this space very closely. Do follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. Do we have YouTube? I'm not too sure. But yes, do follow us. And I'm sure there'll be new news coming up ahead in the days of the future. So thank you again for your time. I hope you had a good lunch listening to this, and looking forward to engaging with all of you the days ahead. So you can see our email addresses and also the M-DAQ website on this slide right here. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions that we can help you with. Feel free. And that's it. That's all, folks. And hope to see you around soon. Stay safe and take care.
Thank you and goodbye.